I did not sleep that night. The rain was relentless, an unending curtain of water that turned the fields of Waterloo into a muddy trap. It fell without mercy, soaking the earth, soaking the soul. Waterloo was never meant to be fought like this, on land that pulls men down with every heavy step. So I waited, not from fear, but from calculation. I needed the earth to dry. I believed time was still mine to command, a servant to my will. But as the sky finally began to lighten, I realized the bitter truth. The morning would no longer obey me. I opened the battle as I always had, with the thunder of my artillery. The guns spoke with fire, but the ground answered back with silence. The shots did not bounce or shatter. They buried themselves deep in the cold mud, losing their deadly force. What should have broken Wellington's line only served as a warning. I sent the infantry forward, uphill, slowly. Boots sank, formations bent, and every step demanded more than a man could give. Momentum, my greatest weapon, had become mere effort. Wellington did not rush. He simply waited, knowing the mud was his greatest ally. The rhythm of the battle was slowing, drifting into a heavy, suffocating fog. Orders took longer to matter. Movements cost more than I had planned. This was no longer a battle of brilliance or grand strategy. It was becoming a massacre of pure endurance. The smoke hung low, thick with the iron scent of blood and wet earth. I watched my men carefully, measuring every sign of weakness. When a battle slows like this, it begins to ask a dangerous question. A question that echoes in the heart of every commander. Who will break first? At first, they were only distant shadows, flickering like ghosts on the edge of the world. Dark shapes moving where there should have been only empty space. Then, the truth arrived. The Prussians. A second army was closing in, advancing with a terrifying certainty. The battlefield was no longer a single line. It was becoming a vice, and I was caught in its center. I understood then that victory was slipping through my fingers. Time was no longer neutral. Time had chosen a side, and I was running out of it. I searched the field for one last hope, something untouched by the chaos. There was only one force left, the Imperial Guard. They were not meant to rescue battles. They were born to end them. There was nothing left in reserve, so I sent them forward into the mouth of hell. For a moment, the field remembered who we were. The lines tightened, and the air seemed to pause in respect. Belief returned to my men, a flicker of the old fire. But then, they stopped. The impossible had happened. The guard was no longer moving. They did not break, they did not flee, but they did not advance. And when the guard does not advance, the heart of the army stops beating. The words spread faster and more deadly than any cannon fire. La garde recule. The guard is falling back. That sentence shattered the soul of France. Confidence cracked, and formations that had stood for hours began to loosen. It was not fear that took them, but a cold realization. The legend was dying before my eyes, and no order of mine could bring it back. The retreat began quietly, then dissolved into a flood of chaos. order turned to movement, and movement turned to flight. The field I had tried to control now controlled us, carrying us away like debris in a storm. Waterloo was not lost in a single charge. It was lost minute by minute, decision by decision, until there was nothing left but the sound of running feet. In that retreat, I faced a truth more bitter than death. This was not just the end of a day or the end of a battle. It was the death of an empire. I watched the field empty of certainty as the sun began to set on my life's work. This defeat was not caused by a lack of courage, but by ground that would not carry us and time that slipped beyond my command. Waterloo was a slow, agonizing realization that some days will simply not obey, no matter the cost. As my army vanished into the mist and the darkness, I knew the era of Napoleon had finally reached its end. I left my crown in the mud. Now, the only empire I have left is this eternal silence.